What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the November 22nd, 2021 edition of Raw Talk. So usually on Raw Talk and on Talking Smack, it's Matt Camp and Jackie Redmond breaking down all the action from the shows. This week specifically, I don't know if it's going to be exclusive to the post-pay-per-view shows or just this week, or if it's going to be a new thing going forward, which I hope it is. They're going to be bringing on guests, so they teased the guests for Talking Smack this coming week. And on this show, they had JBL as the special analyst breaking down Survivor Series and Raw for Monday. I'm not the biggest JBL fan in the world, mind you, but it was nice getting a fresh voice here on the show, and I like Redmond and I like Camp, but I've been reviewing these shows since the start, since they brought them back last year. The original format of the shows where they had people on from the shows, like from the Raw and SmackDown rosters, and they do now, but they're limited to very, very brief backstage interviews. So the way they do it now is very cut and dry with the analysis that really doesn't mean anything. Jackie Redmond doesn't really offer a lot. She does a decent job, but it's been about a month or two now, and I still prefer Kayla Braxton over Jackie. Matt Camp is fine. He knows his history. He watches the product. He brings up some cool tidbits here and there. But overall, the analysis is like a lot of the same shit you see on the bump. I don't watch the fucking bump because all the shit they say is the same. Because they work for the company, so they're really not going to overly criticize or analyze the product the way that, you and I would or whatever. So it's a lot of the same shit you would see on the bump. I know what they're going for with the format of the show, like what you would see on ESPN. But when you work for the company that you're breaking down, it doesn't exactly make it impartial. So a lot of the analysis, therefore, is completely pointless. Not that JBL's going to come on here and shit on everything, but at least they have a different voice, in addition to Jackie and Matt Camp. JBL has been in the ring. He's been a part of a lot of Survivor Series shows. Apparently, he watches the product consistently, it looks like, from what he sounded like here, from what he said. So, again, not the biggest JBL fan in the world, but it was nice getting a different voice on the show for a change. So to open up Raw Talk, they replayed the ending of the show that saw Big E successfully defend the WWE Championship against Austin Theory, with Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens bickering at ringside and causing Theory to be distracted and lose the match. Fabulous finish, I know. So then they talk about how Rollins made a statement at Survivor Series, JBL says, by being the sole survivor, and says that, listen, he wants that WWE Championship. And Balor is in his way of getting that title match, which is why they didn't have a match. He doesn't care about Balor. He really gains nothing from beating Balor or having a match with Balor. He wants the WWE Championship that he earned that opportunity about a month ago. So they confirmed here on Raw Talk that Balor was checked up by medical after he was attacked by Rollins on the show, so I'm sure he won't miss any time. Like, from a storyline standpoint, I'm sure he'll be back next week. And JBL, of course, being the heel that he is, agreed with what Rollins did and said, again, exactly what I just said, that Balor is in his way of becoming WWE Champion. They kind of transition into the Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair match from Survivor Series, the champion versus champion match. And JBL says back when he was WWE Champion in 2004-2005, he wishes he could have had a match against the opposing brand's champion, at that point Triple H, in a WWE versus World Heavyweight Champion matchup. Maybe title for title, who knows. But he loves the champion versus champion matches to solidify your superiority over the other. And he says that there's nothing better than beating someone at their own game, referencing Charlotte attempting to beat Becky by using nefarious tactics, Becky turning the tables and beating her with nefarious tactics. They talk about RK Bro and Orton's record of, breaking the record at Survivor Series of most pay-per-view matches ever in WWE history. Very impressive accolade. JBL says that Orton now is as dangerous as he's ever been and congratulates him on that accomplishment. They also talk about RK Bro and, Riddle dressing up as Randy on Raw this week. And he says that Orton and Riddle have kind of figured out how to work together, and they make for a great unit. So we hear from Riddle backstage at Raw with, I think, Sarah Schreiber, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it was Sarah Schreiber. And they just kind of talk about the match, and he called Survivor Series amazing, and he said if you want to be a Viper, you got to look like a Viper. He really said nothing of note. He kind of recapped how great Raw and Survivor Series were for him and Orton. The best part of this entire interview with Riddle was the fact that he was wearing a WCW NWO Revenge sweatshirt from the N64 well over 20 years ago. That was the best part of the entire interview. I don't know where he bought that sweatshirt. I don't know why he has that sweatshirt. It was fucking cool. Obviously, they didn't reference it. Sarah Schreiber probably has no idea what the sweatshirt's about, but If that was me, I'd be like, yo, that sweatshirt's awesome. Where did you get it? Maybe they sell it somewhere, but I thought that was pretty cool. Back to the studio, Matt Camp and Jackie Redmond recap Dana Brooke becoming the 24/7 champion. Yes, really. By pinning Cedric Alexander on the show after Cedric had just beaten Reggie. They talk about how she has a target on her back. Who gives a fuck? They also recap Almost as Bad a Royal win from Survivor Series representing Raw, as well as the Street Profits versus AJ Styles and Omos on Raw. That's how Styles and Omos win by DQ after the Profits got themselves intentionally disqualified with a fire extinguisher. And the reason why they did that, apparently, I'm just realizing this now. I'm a fucking moron if this was the point. Maybe other people got the reference. I completely, it flew over my head. But they don't want the smoke, or they want the smoke or whatever, so they use the fire extinguisher. That's really fucking dumb. So Kevin Patrick attempts to interview them backstage at Raw, and every time he asks them a question, they respond with smoke. That's all they say over and over and over and over again. And then Kevin kind of goes along with it. He starts singing Smoke with them, and he kind of ends the interview all happy-go-lucky. So nothing of note here said at all from Montez Ford or Angelo Dawkins. I like the Profits, but this was completely stupid and pointless. Although Kevin Patrick having fun with it was a bit funny. They also recap Bobby Lashley versus Rey and Dominic Mysterio in the 2-on-1 handicap match from Monday's Raw. JBL says Lashley is just clicking right now. He's a completely different person today than he was even a few years ago. Even back when they were feuding over the United States Championship nearly 15 years ago. Completely different person today. And he said it takes a while to kind of find yourself after losing that top title, but he's got his sights set, it looks like, on regaining the WWE Championship. So they really pushed the narrative here of Bobby potentially at some point re-entering the WWE title scene, which I feel is inevitable based on how they booked him as of late. So we'll see where that goes. They also recap Rhea Ripley and Nikki Ash losing the WWE Women's Tag Team titles to Carmella and Queen Zelina. JBL says that both teams are meshing right now, but Carmella and Vega are just a terrific tag team. Maybe it's a more matter of when and not if their ego problems are going to get the better of them and cause a split for the team. But for now, they're champions. And JBL does kind of reiterate what we've all been thinking and saying that it's time for Rhea and Nikki to go their separate ways. Rhea specifically has a much... I like Nikki, but Rhea, there's a lot of untapped potential there in the Raw Women's title picture, doing really anything on her own. Rhea should not be teaming with anyone on the regular, and the Nikki-Rhea stuff is just... It's not for me personally. They work well together in the ring, but as characters, I know what they're going for, but we've already seen it a million times before with RK Bro and Team Hell No and all this other stuff. So it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, he does say that he predicts that they're going to try to get their titles back. As far as what's next for them, he thinks they'll try to get the titles back. They will fail, and he's excited for Rhea's future specifically. He didn't mention Nikki. He specifically said, "I'm excited to see what Rhea can do again on her own," and I completely agree with that. They closed out the episode with an interview backstage with Sarah Schreiber interviewing Carmella and Zelina about becoming the new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. They take the mic, completely hijack the interview and kind of interview themselves, and Carmella takes on an accent. They were just celebrating the whole time. Nothing of note here was said, and JBL said they were entertaining, so that was that. I do like the pairing of Zelina and Carmella. I think they work well together. The problem is that this division has no fucking teams beyond those two teams. And maybe if Natalya and Tamina get back together, they kind of tease something there at the end of that segment with Bianca and Doudrop, but Natalya's on SmackDown, so I'm not exactly sure how that works. I think the women's tag team titles in this company, if they booked them properly, would be cool, but they've never really felt meaningful, ever really since they started, and maybe when they started, but beyond that, beyond like WrestleMania 35, they've been a complete prop. They're completely fucking pointless, and the fact they only have two teams can prove that to you. I don't think Rhea and Nikki have had maybe one successful title defense in the time they were champions, against the former champions Natalya and Tamina, and that's it. So, they got to move Rhea on from Nikki Ash. She's got to be back on her own. I completely agree with that. And we'll see what Zelina and Carmella can do in their role now as the Women's Tag Team Champions. So, a decent episode this week of Raw Talk. The interviews were actually not the highlight. Usually the backstage interviews are what make the show worth watching. I thought the analysis from JBL, again, you might not be the biggest JBL fan, neither am I, but I thought he did a great job. I mean, he clearly watches the product. He knows what he's talking about. Didn't really have any great nuggets of information, but I thought he added a lot to the show. And I think the show is better off in having a recurring guest, and not a recurring guest, but like a different third voice, as opposed to Matt Camp and Jackie Redmond doing all the analysis, because they work well together, they have decent chemistry, but they don't really add anything. They just kind of recap what we just saw on Raw, which usually isn't overly interesting. So bringing in a third person like a JBL or whoever they have in mind for SmackDown, I think is a very good idea. So we'll see what they got in mind for Talking Smack on Saturday. But yeah, Raw Talk from November 22nd, 2021. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Be sure to stay tuned for more live reactions, interviews, Q&A videos, reviews, and so much more here on the channel by subscribing and hitting that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.